Marner's backhand flips it out with 3 seconds left. Tavares chases it down and puts it in the empty net after time expires. And the Maple Leafs win.
Does Max ever get to call a win? I mean, seriously, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Predators lose again last night at Toronto. They are back tonight, 6 o'clock right here on 102.5, the game from Montreal, which if they were ever going to win a game, this would be the game to win today. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up? What up?
Let's start on the hockey game. I mean, let's just start right there. You know, look, my phone at approximately, in fact, let me get you the exact time. My phone went bananas yesterday at 8:44 p.m., which was probably roughly that third period, 5-minute stretch where the Predators just let Austin Matthews go right to the front of the goal and just put it right in. I mean, what do you think's going to happen when Austin Matthews just goes right to the front of the net? Now, look, 5-on-3 Nylander, it is what it is. But here's the depressing part. This is what I can't get over. There's a lot of things I can't get over when it comes to the start of the Predator season and to last night's game. But this is the main thing. How are all of these games the exact same? Every game. It doesn't matter if they're playing crappy Philadelphia. It doesn't matter if they're playing championship caliber Toronto. It doesn't matter if the game is at home. It doesn't matter if the game is in Canada. It doesn't matter if the game is in Beirut. They find a way to score 2 goals. And I'm not even totally sure how they find a way to score those 2 because they don't generate any pressure on the opposing net. I mean, the 2 goals last night were total flukes, both of them. Unless you think Mark Jankowski is just going to, start putting it in with his back turned to the net every single night. They play hard every night. They played hard on Wednesday against Philly. They played hard against Tampa. They played hard against Minnesota. They played hard last night against Toronto. They play hard. But they don't score, and they don't even come close to scoring, really, on anything other than these just fluky goals. Then they lose 3-2. The last 3 have been in overtime. This one was in regulation. They lose 3-2. And then everybody after the game is just flummoxed. Like you see it on the bench. You see it on the coach. You see it on the players. You see it in the post-game interviews. You see it. I hear Willie trying to defend the team on the midday show. He's just flummoxed. That's the only word I can come up with. They look like, God, we're doing everything we can and nothing's working. And that's the problem. 4 straight games losing 3-2. And it does not matter who they're playing. It doesn't matter if it's Austin Matthews and William Nylander and Mitch Marner or the terrible Flyers. I mean, they could call up the Milwaukee Admirals, play them in a game at the Ford Ice Center, and they would lose 3-2 in overtime. It doesn't matter if it's in Saskatchewan or not. It doesn't matter who's on the ice for the Predators. It doesn't matter if it's Steven Stamkos and Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg, or if they call up jabronis from Milwaukee like Jared Stillman and Ian Safar and Robbie Stanley and Adam Vingan, put them on the line. They'd lose 3-2 every night. This team has no answers. This is the problem. This team has no answers. They've had meetings. They've called guys up. Like, I don't know. Ian, who the hell is Blankenberg?
Nick Blankenberg. Yeah. The blank man.
Who is that?
He's, believe he was, I think they said 26 years old, defenseman. Kind of been around. I think he had a cup of coffee in Columbus, mostly in the minors. And here he is.
I mean, I see this guy floating around on the ice last night. I'm like, who is this computer-generated Madden player I've never heard of? They're calling guys up. They've gotten rid of guys like Fabro and Tomasino, and they go elsewhere, and they seem to be doing okay, which is another bad sign. And then it's like, what cards do they have to play to turn this thing around and fix this? Because they can't do anything with Yossi or Soros or Forsberg or Marchessault or Shea or Stamkos because of their contracts. So then, I hate to say it, but at this point, isn't the only option left to fire the coach? Like, isn't that, and again, I'm not advocating to fire the coach, but I'm running out of options to change these games from being the exact same every single night. And I heard Willie say on the midday show today, and I heard Barry say something similar, and I heard Hal on the show yesterday. Hal was like, they're playing well. I'm like, no, they're not, Hal. They're losing every game 3-2. Like, where I come from, that's bad. Losing a game 3-2 is not the end of the world, but losing every single one of them 3-2 is bad. Losing in overtime is bad. If you lose every game in overtime over the course of the year, you end up with 82 points. You are about 15 to 10 points away from making the playoffs. If you lose every single game every night in overtime, you have the least amount of wins in the conference. You have the worst goal differential. You have the least amount of wins in the NHL. And it's the same every night. And again, it doesn't matter who they play. And it's not like they're not playing hard, because they are playing hard. It's just the same. They can't generate anything on offense. And I got to say this about the goalie too. Again, if you let Austin Matthews just dilly-dally right in front of the net, he's going to score, which is what happened. But when you pay your goalie $8 million a year and you get rid of the other goalie and you roll out the red carpet and you commit to him when half the fans, including me, were wrong, they have a guy in the rotation in baseball. He's called the stopper. Why do they call him the stopper? The closer at the end of the game. He's not the stopper. You know why he's not the stopper? The stopper's job is to stop a losing streak. So when you get a fluky goal, the way you got last night with that Marchessault goal where Joseph Wall just didn't have the puck, or you get that behind the back Magic Johnson goal from Mark Jankowski of all people, at that point, isn't it like, hey, man, I know we got to get to 3, but UC Saros, you got to steal this one. You got to find a way. And he's not doing that either. So again, I don't want to fire the coach, but I am running out of ideas that to me are palatable to think that anything's going to change around here. Like, this is how the league works. The league where if you lose every game 3-2, you get fired. But Jared, if we get on a heater, I agree, but what is the sign that a heater is coming? Right now, the Nashville Predators remind me of a gambler at the table that has gone absolutely cold all night long. They have lost their hat, and they're going back to the ATM because they're just trying to win back what they've already lost. And I don't know how much time you guys have spent at the casino, but that is not a pretty sight. It's like, well, maybe the cards will change. Maybe I'm due for some lady luck. Maybe. But right now, it certainly doesn't feel like it. And I would tell you, well, you know what? Good thing tonight they're playing Montreal, because unlike Toronto, Montreal freaking stinks. But the problem is, so did the Flyers. And you lost to them the same way you're losing to everybody else. Again, I don't even know who has a college hockey team in the area. TSU has a hockey team, don't they, Ian?
I think they might actually.
Put TSU's team on the ice. They'll lose 3-2 in overtime. I promise you. Like, if I don't know what the over-under for goals is tonight. If it's over-under, like if it's 4.5, over. If it's 5.5, under. It's going to be 3-2 tonight. It's the same every night. So again, and being serious here, at this point, other than, well, let's see, I don't know what the Predators can do other than fire the coach. And at this point, I'm not even sure that firing the coach would give you the kind of rebound that you would need to get yourself back into the playoffs. I mean, I know why they're not winning. They can't score. They can't generate. They can't score. That's it. And I'm just as shocked as anybody because I thought the one thing this team wasn't going to have a problem with was scoring. But the difference between me and I think other people is I'm not doing this thing where I'm putting my head in the sand and saying, well, they're trying. I mean, they're trying. They're having meetings. They're working. Because what good does that do? They've had meetings. They've had tough conversations. They've scratched guys. They've had closed door Andrew Burnett, Steven Stamkos. They've had, and it's not changing. So again, let me be perfectly clear. I'm not demanding that this team fire the coach, though I am getting close. But I wonder this, what other choices are they going to have when every game is the same? Is it as simple as telling guys like Jankowski and Evangelista, although I think Evangelista is part of the long-term solution, not the problem. But is it like telling Tommy Novak and these guys, go down to Milwaukee or we're going to waive you or whatever, scratch you, and we're calling up Kimmel and Schaefer and whoever? Because, again, I don't think you're going to win if you do that. But that seems like the only other option at this point that's not firing the coach. So that's where they are. Last night's game, incredibly disappointing. They got off to a 1-0 start. I thought maybe they've got a shot, and I should have known better because these games are all the same. 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, and everybody is completely frustrated and flummoxed after the game. And you can give me the whys and you can give me the theories and the explanations and you can give me all of that. That's fine. But I don't see anything improving, which is the hard part here. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program if you want to weigh in on the Predators. Last night for me, again, I've told you guys I'm pretty much out on the season anyways, and I don't want to fire the coach. I want to do everything I can not to fire the coach. But last night, it's watching the same game over and over and over again. 615-737-1025. And here's the other part of it. Because I know Andrew Burnett's doing his best. But at some point, this is the NHL. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. And a reminder for all the fine folks out there that you can give a great gift this Christmas to somebody by checking out Nashville's best deals at theGameNashville.com/deals. Right now, you can purchase half-off gift cards for Princess Hot Chicken, Bavarian Beer House, Fat Bottom Brewing, Black Rabbit, and Staley's Chicago Dining. What is it that makes you sure that he's part of the solution to this?
Well, I think when I hired him, I said, I don't know how it's going to go. I said, I don't know if it's going to be a retool, rebuild. It's going to be a re-something. But I do know this. I want to play faster. I want to play a little different style that allows guys like Roman Yossi not to get hit as much. For the most part, he's done that. Now, our team probably hasn't met expectations, and I said it's going to take a while. We added 2 legacy players it's quite difficult for them to sort of integrate, if you will. And they're going to be part of the solution. And then, obviously that we're not going to change the plan. We're going to try to stay with adding young players when we can, like we did with Sveshkov, LaRue. We got guys like Schaefer that will be coming. I just didn't anticipate using them this soon, but if we spiral down a little bit, but at the same time, it is what it is. We've got to get going. We've got to collect some points, and we've got to go see if we can get back in the race here. So, I think we got till Christmas to find out if we're can get ourselves back within punching distance. If not, then you're probably going to see more and more of the young guys in.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz on our show on Tuesday. And again, he said, hey, if we don't get it by Christmas, you're going to see more of the young guys. Not if we don't get it together by Christmas, you're going to see a change at the coach. Barry is staunchly committed to Andrew Burnett. And I'm at the point too where I'm like, look, you've got probably a better chance or as good of a chance at having the number 1 pick in the draft as you do making it to the playoffs. So if Andrew Burnett's going to get you to it, why not let him get you through it, get the number 1 pick, and then finally get a big boy forward or something like that, and then probably move on at the end of the year. But it doesn't even sound like Trotz is thinking like that. I'd be a little surprised if you got the number 1 pick if you didn't come back. But here's the one thing I'm going to say about the Burnett stuff. Because, again, I'm not calling for the coach to be fired. I'm just not really sure what other choices you have. It's starting to get to that point. But if I had said to Andrew Burnett on July 1st, because Andrew Burnett came on the show, they signed they signed Stamkos, Marchessault, Brady Shea, Wedgwood, etc. And Barry held a press conference at like 2:00. And I was like, well, what's the point of having Barry on at 2:00 and then, with them having him on for, I said, let's put Burnett on. So we had Burnett on that day. And if I had said to Andrew Burnett on July 1st, hey, on December 5th, you're going to have 7 wins, which would be dead last in the NHL, a -22 goal differential, which will be the worst in the Western Conference, and Mark Jankowski will be your second-line center, and there will not be a major injury. What do you think he would have said? Like, do you think he would have said, oh, well, I probably did the best I could do? Or do you think he would have said, I might be getting fired on that? Like, it's hilarious. Like, Rand Carthon at the Combine said to Chase, he's like, yeah, I don't worry about the criticisms because I got to go out there and win football games. And if I don't win football games, I'm not going to have this job anymore. Well, if you told him, hey, you're going to win 3 games next year, I wonder what he would have said right then and there. And the reason that I think Andrew Burnett would have looked at you and said, yeah, I'm probably in some serious trouble if that happens. If there's not a major injury, yeah, I'm probably in trouble. Because that's how this league works. And just because Barry Trotz has a different opinion than all the other general managers in the NHL doesn't mean that as fans, you can't argue for what you think the average team would probably do in this case. And it's like Robbie Stanley said to me yesterday, this team may not have a choice when it comes to the coach. And my thing about underachieving seasons, there has to be a why that explains it. A why that says, okay, this I get. Like this I understand. The why. And I'll use Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco as the example. Because the 49ers are having a bad season. And I've heard some things on Twitter about, could Kyle Shanahan be on the hot seat? And I'm like, what? They were in the Super Bowl last year. They've been to the Super Bowl twice. They've been to the NFC title game like 6 times. They got injuries to Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey and contract issues with Trent Williams, and Debo was in the hospital. And I mean, I can chalk that up to a bad season of injuries, bad luck, bad everything. Kyle Shanahan's not a bad coach. But where's that explanation for this team? And again, I didn't like watching Tomasino play anymore. I didn't. I was tired of it. But since Tomasino has gotten to Pittsburgh, they played Vancouver and they won. They played Boston. He had a goal. They won. They played Calgary. He had a goal. They won. They played Florida. He had an assist. In overtime, they won. At some point, I have to start asking the why on that too. Like, why is Tomasino, who never did anything here in 3 years, why has he gone somewhere else and they don't lose anymore? And you can't win. And I got to get a why that's other than, well, you know, and Trotz kind of hinted at this saying, look, it's been a tough adjustment for Stamkos and Marchessault, which is what he said. And again, we had Brian Poyle on, the assistant GM. And Brian said a couple weeks ago, hey, Brady Shea's coming along. But remember, Yossi had his issues last year learning the system. Got it. So why does everybody else who was on the team last year stink this year? And I don't have the answers to the why. The sad part is I'm not sure they have the answers to the why. The difference between them and me is it's their job to figure that out. I keep comparing myself to a doctor. I'm not one. So I'm not going to try to make a diagnosis. I can tell you something is not right. And it is up to the paid professionals that have spent their lives and all the years in medical school and fellowship and residency and whatever. It's up to them to figure it out. Well, these guys have been doing hockey for free. It's up to them to figure it out. And when every game is the same, or when Tomasino goes off and they win at crappy Pittsburgh, I need some answers. Some answers other than, well, we've had some meetings. Some answers other than they're doing their best. Like, I need some answers. All right, let's hit some phones on it because there are a lot of people that want to get in. 615-737-1025 on the Predators. And again, I guess we're all just still waiting. But how long do you? It's December 5th. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Now it's a 5-on-3 as Nyes joins the play. 5 forwards for the Leafs, 5-on-3. Sissons, Shea, and Carrier out there for the Preds. Matthews one-timer, saves Saros. Matthews looking for a natural hat trick here in the first 5 minutes of the third. Marner down low, nice pass across, and Nylander hits the open net with a one-timer from the low left circle. A 5-on-3 goal makes it 3-1 Leafs. All 3 Toronto goals in the first 5 minutes and 6 seconds of the third period.
Well, I tell you, Max has done a very good job under some very unfortunate circumstances in his first season doing the primary road broadcast for the Predators. So I have a quick thought, and then we'll get to your phones. If you asked me what I think the problem is, and again, I'm no hockey guru. I'm not, my name's not Pierre from Montreal. But I think it's the start. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, the 0-5-0 start. And I think it put a giant cloud of anxiety over the entire team, from Barry Trotz to the players to the coaches, and ever since they've been running uphill. Ian, do you remember the old Zoloft commercials? You know, the antidepressant Zoloft?
I'm aware. I'm not sure I exactly remember which commercial you're referring to, but.
So the old Zoloft commercials had like an animal. I think it might have been a dog. I can't remember, but it was a cartoon, and it had a cloud above the head of the dog or whatever animal it was. And it basically was describing depression. And it was saying, do you always feel like you have this cloud over your head? Then take Zoloft and get rid of the cloud. And then, of course, it told you to check with your doctor, and it probably listed about 18,000 things that could have been side effects. But I remember that commercial like from 15, 20 years ago. That 0-5-0 start put that giant cloud over their head. And I said to somebody yesterday, and again, we all know what happens when you say, if this would have happened or if this hadn't happened, again, that's what losers say. But right now, that's what you are. You've won the least amount of games in the NHL. So you guys right now, I hate to say it, losers. But I said to someone yesterday, if Steven Stamkos doesn't hit the post at the end of the first game with about 9 seconds to go against Dallas and sends the game to overtime and they get a point, or they win the game in overtime, I think we may be talking about a complete and totally different season. And I actually believe that. And I know that this sounds crazy and it sounds like an excuse, but again, I'm not telling you that the record isn't what it is, and I'm not telling you that the season isn't headed where I think it's headed. But that's what I think the crux of the issue was, the start, and digging themselves out of it. And that's why I think, I hate to say it, but we are where we are. 615-737-1025, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. If you want to weigh in, one texter said, I've learned this about a month ago. They will not turn this around. Too far gone. They probably will start playing well in 25 more games to look forward to next season. But by then, who's fired or traded? But to fire the coach is dumb. The team cannot build consistency and rapport by firing someone every time things go in the dumps. Well, this isn't really about going in the dumps. This is about being the worst team in the league when you were supposed to be one of the best teams in the league. Those are two totally different things. Like, everybody does this every time it comes to firing somebody, and it's like, well, you can't fire them because... And it's like, guys, we've already passed all of this. We've fired people when you shouldn't have been able to fire them. Peter Laviolette hung every banner in that arena. And less than half a season after hanging a 100-point division title, he was gone. I would say you can't fire that guy. The guy who won the Western Conference, who won the President's Trophy, who won the division with 100 points. And half a season later, he's gone? But they did. I would say you can't fire the football coach who took the worst team in the NFL and in 2 years had them winning a playoff game. But they did. I would argue you can't fire the general manager who won 61% of his games, 7-5 and in first place in the middle of the week before a divisional game. And they did. I would argue you can't fire, if the general manager was so bad that he had to get fired in the middle of the year, you can't fire the head coach who was the former coach of the year. But they did. So stop telling me that you can't fire people. You absolutely can fire people. You fire whoever you want. And so the idea of, well, you can't fire Burnett because that'll be, to me, that is not a valid excuse for him to keep his job. There may be a valid excuse for him to keep his job. It may be, hey, the system stuff will click, and when it does, this team will be good. And this season may be too far gone, but maybe next year. And again, that's not something I want to hear, but that's more of an argument than, well, you just can't do it. You just can't do that. I mean, I'm sorry. We can't fire the coach. We can't fire the coach every time this team massively underperforms. That's hockey. I heard yesterday on the midday show, they said that the average lifespan of an NHL coach is 2.3 seasons, which apparently is the shortest in all of professional sports, which is kind of wild to me that hockey, which, again, I think traditionally probably gets the least amount of anger and intense. Again, you lose a hockey game in November to Calgary. It's like, okay, you lose a football game because the kicker missed it by 1 foot, and it's like fire everybody every week. But apparently they fire coaches faster in hockey than they do any other sport. One texter says, in all seriousness, when was the last time Willie called for someone to be fired, traded, or cut? Fair point. I do love Willie, though, so it is what it is. One texter says, have there been any players that have gotten better under Burnett? No offense against your buddy Barry Trotz, but he sounds like he doesn't have a clue. For Trotz to say it is what it is like saying the ball didn't bounce their way. Again, I mean, the difference is I don't think Barry Trotz is like running from the criticism by saying the ball, like Barry's not coming on here saying that we've been unlucky. Now, when he started talking about how they had won, hey, we have points in 8 of our last 7, whatever it was, he said, that I did not like hearing. But at the same time, there's a difference between just saying, oh, hey, ball didn't bounce our way today. We lost by 50 points. And, hey, we're going to get this right, or I'm making changes, which is what he said on this program. There is a difference. Adam in Portland's mad. He says the Predators are terrible. All offseason, we heard about how great the GM, coach, and roster were with promises of Stanley Cup aspirations. Remember that Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea commercial we kept hearing. The only accurate part was that we have veteran players, but those veteran players seem like bad picks who aren't meshing. That's on coaching. So now both the GM and coach look like massive failures. Call them that because they are, and don't start talking about prospects. No one in 2024 cares about 2028. Did I bring up the prospects? Ian, where did the don't bring up the prospects come from? Because we haven't talked about the picks and all that stuff.
Is he talking about like us don't bring up the prospects, or is he talking to like Trotz and the team, like don't bring them up from AHL?
To be honest with you, I think he's talking about Willie. Because I heard Willie yesterday talking about, not firing the coaches about the future.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, I don't think that's like, I don't think that he's paid to win in the future. I think he's paid to win now. They're talking about the future, not firing the coach. I mean,
I do wonder if we just underestimated the transition with Marchessault and Stamkos in particular. They seem like their whole world has been turned upside down at this point.
It does feel like, old dog, new trick syndrome.
And
you know what I mean?
It's just with everything, I don't know if it's just like, it's not, we can talk about system, whatever, but I think just the whole new team, new organization, new everything, I think has probably just been maybe harder to handle than we all thought.
Well, I think it's new team, new system, new organization, and then everything changing right away because they started off 0-5.
Yeah.
And that's where,
knowing,
again, I go back to the Zoloft commercial of, where the cloud. So Vingan actually sent me the YouTube video of the Zoloft commercial. And it's like a little round dot that's got a giant cloud over its head. And it's very sad looking. So it wasn't even a dog. It was just a giant round dot. But again, put that back into the, pile of useless crap that stows away in my head.
Because those guys were very comfortable with their previous stops,
So I had somebody yesterday text in and they said, what about these guys getting paid and now they don't feel? I'm like, these guys were already rich. Like Yossi, Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly. I mean, I don't know how much money Brady Shea's made in the league, but I'm guessing a lot. Like, these guys were already rich. Like, it's not like Steven Stamkos just signed his first contract. So I'm not really thinking that that's what it is. But to your point, like when you're in one place for forever, it's kind of like being on the radio. And I'm going to explain what this means because everybody just thinks if you're good on the radio in Nashville, you'll be good on the radio anywhere else. And there is some truth to that. The basic fundamentals of doing talk radio are the same. The blocking and tackling, the getting in and out of breaks, the endorsement reads, talking to callers, coming up with topics, etc. But I have no idea what the number one topic in Denver, Colorado is right now. I assume it's Sean Payton and Bo Nix, but I don't know. How much do they care about the Rockies compared to the Nuggets, compared to Deion Sanders, I don't know. So if I were to just fly in right now and to start doing radio in Denver, Colorado, I don't know if I'd be very good because I don't know a lot about Denver, Colorado. It would take some time. That's one of the reasons why I think Caroline was successful, was because we brought her along slowly. And I do think that there's probably something to what Ian's bringing up about Stamkos has done it one way, and now he's being asked to do it another way. And it goes back to old dog, new trick syndrome. But even then, the guys that are already on the team should be playing better than they were, or playing better than they are now, like they did last year. And the goalie should steal a game. It would be nice if the goalie would steal one of these 3-2s, maybe stand on your head and make it 2-1. And still none of that's happening. 615-737-1025 here on the program if you want to weigh in. And speaking of GMs, boy, I sent out a tweet today that got everybody all riled up. But I think you got to kind of admit that, hate to say it, it's kind of true. We'll get to it coming up next. Hey, be sure to join me, Chris Sanders, and D. Mace downtown at JBJ's this Sunday for the award-winning pregame show, 9:30 to 11, as we'll break down the Titans and the Jags. The award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon.
You have an update on Traylon Burks?
I do. I should have mentioned this probably before, but he went on IR with an ACL injury initially. It was a loose ACL that wasn't fully torn, and so they had to go to see some doctors and some specialists, and some weeks went by after he went on IR, but he eventually had to have ACL surgery. So he is out for the year, not coming back, obviously, with that surgery. So went to IR, had some tests and some further work done, and had to have the surgery. So the surgery was, I don't want to speak out of turn on the date, but couple weeks back probably. But it was from the time he went to IR to when it happened was also a couple of weeks. So kind of got lost in the shuffle there on the IR board.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday. Traylon Burks done for the year. Who knows when he's coming back? I expect Burks will be on the team next year, but who knows? Burks' career is essentially what it is. Over. And so, look, I said yesterday as much, and we will talk tomorrow at length about the 2-year anniversary of the decision to fire John Robinson. But there is no running from that, as that probably being the single worst decision this organization has made since they moved to Nashville. Like, yes, I'm sure we can go through and parse, like, and say, well, they didn't take Randy Moss over Kevin Dyson. But again, excuse me, that was not that's not a binary decision. I'm talking about like 1-for-1 mono, like fire this guy, hire that guy. I guess the other decision I would say that is equally up there as bad is the choosing Jeff Fisher over Floyd Reese. That would be the other one. But I saw a tweet today that I decided to quote tweet. This came from Kayla Anderson, and then A to Z Sports, I guess, put it in their own tweet. So it doesn't make any sense. Kayla Anderson's words repurposed by A to Z Sports. Kayla Anderson said on Twitter, and I love Kayla Anderson with all my heart, so do not make this out to be Jared said this about Kayla Anderson. Kayla Anderson tweeted out, crazy to think that the Titans had 3 straight first-round picks under John Robinson, all who have not worked out. Isaiah Wilson, Caleb Farley, and Traylon Burks. A to Z Sports put out there, the Titans weren't left in a very good spot by the Robinson era. I quote tweeted it, and I said, the Titans just lost by 3 touchdowns to the Commanders, who drafted Chase Young in 2020, not on the team, Jamin Davis in 2021, not on the team, and Jahan Dotson in 2022, not on the team, over the exact same period. And everybody lost their mind. The amount of tears. Again, Ian, is there a lie in anything that I said about the fact that people say, John Robinson's why the Titans are so bad because he missed on Wilson, Farley, and Burks? Well, the Commanders, who actually had better draft picks at that point in time, Chase Young was number 2 overall. They missed on Chase Young. They missed on Jamin Davis. They missed on Jahan Dotson. Is there any lie in that?
That they missed on those players?
Correct.
I think those were misses, yeah.
And is it a lie that they lost by 3 touchdowns on Sunday to that exact same team?
42-19 was the final, yeah.
So where's the lie?
Well, it's just the positions. Are they the same, as far as defensive lineman versus offensive tackle, right tackle,
But don't you think
that kind of stuff? I don't know.
You should hit on the number 2 pick before you should hit on the number 28 pick?
Probably, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, even Jahan Dotson was the pick before before Traylon Burks. My point is this. John Robinson screwed up at the end. I'm not walking away from that. I mean, John Robinson, at the very least, should have, this is just my opinion, should have been given the end of the 2022 season, and then should have been given, in my opinion, one more offseason to try to get it right. He probably wouldn't have, and thus probably would have been fired. But that's not what happened. They fired him right then and there. And they said, we're going to be better. And they have done nothing but get worse. And it's always the previous guy's fault. It doesn't matter if it's politics or the NFL or a curriculum. It's always the last guy's fault. But in this case, when you look at those 3 whiffs in the first round and you say, I mean, this is why the Titans suck, you're doing a disservice to reality because the Commanders did the exact same thing and they're good now. You're excusing the misses today because, again, you drafted Peter Skoronski with the 11th overall pick, and he sucks at a position that doesn't even matter. And some people got mad saying, well, the Commanders drafted Jaden Daniels, Jared. Right, and these guys drafted Will Levis. So their quarterback versus your quarterback, you drafted your quarterback. What I'm saying is, at some point, you have to actually look at the job that these guys have done and say, hey, it's not good enough. Not just keep passing blame onto someone who got fired 2 years ago. Especially when the Washington Commanders fired everybody and are good and kicked the living crap out of you on Sunday and missed in the draft just as much as you did. But that's not convenient because that doesn't make you feel good about your situation. It doesn't make you feel good about yourself. It doesn't make you feel good about your current GM or your current coach or your current roster. Well, I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm not one of Aaron Rodgers' ayahuasca trips. I'm here to tell it like it is. And the truth is, apparently the Washington Commanders' current administration can overcome something that your current administration can't. And that's just reality. And the distinguished gentleman on the YouTube chat who we think might actually be Rand, like Rand's burner on the YouTube chat.
Yep.
Just put in there, these guys didn't draft Levis. Okay. I guess Rand just got mad at the media for being too negative after they picked him because he didn't pick him. Come on now. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Will Levis was asked yesterday about what this team expects to accomplish over the next 5 weeks. And it actually led me to an even bigger question for all of us, which we'll get to next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the busy B Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. How about Bill Belichick interviewing for the North Carolina job, which apparently he did today, which I think is kind of wild, but hey, to each their own, I guess. So, Will Levis was asked yesterday, I thought a very interesting question by Jim Wyatt, which was about these final 5 games. The Titans have already got 9 losses, which means they have a losing season no matter what, and what they're looking to get out of these final 5 games. Here's what Jim Wyatt asked and Will Levis said.
What do you think has to happen the last 5 weeks for you guys to end feeling some positivity to end things?
Yeah, I'm not going to attribute a win-loss column to that. I think it'd just be more how we handle ourselves and you know, the type of ball we put on tape. Like, we obviously don't want anything like we had this past week. And if we can kind of keep building on what we had the couple weeks prior to that, and that feel and that cleanliness on offense at least, and cleaning up everything else on the other sides of the ball, like we're gonna be okay. And we know that this is a big opportunity for us to develop as a team and to create and to continue developing our identity. And so we're gonna make sure that we do our best throughout these next few weeks to do that.
Boy, that was a good answer. He didn't really say anything, but hey, I'm not going to put wins and losses on it, but just that we handle things the right way. Okay? But I don't really care what the players want out of the last 5 weeks of the year. That's their business, not mine. What do we want out of the final 5 weeks of this football season? I did the math today. According to the New York Times Upshot, which is their playoff predictor, if the Titans win out, so if they win every game the rest of the way, they would have a 16% chance, based on 85,000 simulations, of making the playoffs. A lot would have to go their way. So I think when we can say, if you win out, which is not likely, if you win out, you have a 16% chance of making the playoffs, I think we can call it. The season is over. I mean, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be reactive. I don't want to be. But I think just like a political race, the decision desk can call it. There's just not enough votes left to make up for them to get into the playoffs and to have something happen. It looked bad after week 3, but there was actually a case after the Houston win that, hey, if they won out, they could make the playoffs the way the Jags did a couple of years ago. And even last week after the Houston win, I went and did the exact same thing. They had an 86% chance of making the playoffs. But that clearly no longer exists because the loss on Sunday to Washington gives you 9 losses, and now even winning out puts you at 16%. So what do we want? Again, Will Levis was asked, hey, I know the season hasn't gone the way that you guys would have wanted, but what do you guys want out of the last 5 weeks of the season? Well, I want the Titans to this, and I want that, and not worried about what Will Levis wants. This is like when we talk about tanking, and it's like, well, so-and-so was in the locker room yesterday, and they talked to so-and-so on the team, and they said they don't care about tanking. Of course, they don't care about the number 1 draft pick, but I do. So what do we want? Do we want the Titans to finish 8-9, win out, feel good about yourselves, pick 15th, and go from there? If you win out, and again, I don't think that's very likely, but if you win out and you go 8-9, that's the best case scenario for everybody here to keep their jobs. Brinker, Carthon, Callahan, Levis, etc. So do you want that? Again, you're going to pick 15th in a draft that I think looks a lot more like the 2022 draft than anybody wants to admit, which was a bad draft. Or do you want them to lose out, go 3-14, and pick 2nd? Because that's probably what 3-14 gets you. So do you want that? Or do you want the Titans to play a certain brand of ball? Titan ball the rest of the way so we can say, hey, they've built an identity. They played Tennessee Titan football. Or do we want Will Levis to go through those games, light it up, throw for 385 yards, and have Colt Anderson lose the games with those special teams, which apparently he had a press conference today and it wasn't pretty? But do we want Will Levis to go out there and either win some of these games or seize the job so that he plays at a certain level that we can say, okay, he's the guy, and even though this disastrous season's behind us, at least we know the Titans have a quarterback? Or do we want every game the rest of the way to be a Washington-like demolition, like what we had on Sunday, so that it would feel like Amy doesn't really have much of a choice but to blow the whole thing up? If every game's like the Washington game the rest of the way, it would be hard for me to see everybody keep their jobs. Where do we sit on this? And this isn't just a Jared Stillman. What do you think, Jared? Because I would say lose every game the rest of the way. I don't care. I mean, I hope that Levis has turned a corner. It wouldn't be the end of the world if Levis developed into a good quarterback. But I think the best we can probably hope is that Levis is a low-end starter, high-end backup. And that's not good enough. I can go get Tannehill. I'm not worried about low-end starter, high-end backup. You know, I mean, I want a dude at quarterback, and I don't think Levis is that. I think you need a high pick, and I think you need somebody else to be doing the picking. That's what I think you need. So what does that mean has to happen? Does that mean that this Sunday has to be one of those, you know, the Titans are favored by 3 and Jacksonville's playing a backup quarterback, and oh my God, they fumbled the opening kickoff and Jacksonville ran it back, touchdown, 7-0. Does it have to be that bad? That even the distinguished gentleman would be saying, okay, it might actually be time for a change around here. Where do you sit on this? Again, this isn't about me. This is about you. It's not my team. It's your team. Well, I think it's all of our team. But where do we sit? You know, again, it's like the old proverb or whatever it is, where a horse runs away. And everybody in the village comes up to him and they say, oh my God, this is terrible that your horse ran away. And he says, well, maybe. And then the horse comes back, but he's brought 9 other horses with him. And so everybody in the village goes, oh, wow, this is great. You have 10 horses. And the guy says, well, maybe. And then one of those other horses is a wild horse, and he bucks the guy's son, the farmer's son, off the horse, and he breaks his leg. And everybody says, oh, it's awful that this horse broke your son's leg. And he says, well, maybe. Then they go to war, but his son can't go to war and doesn't die because he's got a broken leg. And they say, oh, that's so great. He says, well, maybe. Again, the reality here is we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I would say this. I don't know how the Commanders did down the stretch last season, but I would say it's a good thing that they did not win games with Sam Howell, who I actually think is kind of like Levis. I watched Sam Howell at training camp with the Seahawks, and I saw a low-end starter, high-end backup. And I'm like, okay, this guy, you know, he threw for almost 4,000, 5,000 yards last year, 21 touchdowns. Yeah, he had 21 picks, but okay. But it's probably a good thing for the Commanders that they didn't win games down the stretch last year. That they were able to pick Jaden Daniels. That they were able to clean house. And there wasn't a, well, you know, maybe we should stick with the coach. Well, you know, maybe we should stick with the quarterback. So I'm not sitting here telling you that I know what I want out of the last 5 games. But I am sitting up here today telling you, I know it's got to be, well, it's got to be something, right? It's either got to be, hey, we want this thing to truly go up in flames, or we want this team to show us that they can turn a corner the rest of the year. Because there is nothing about the playoffs that can happen at this point. Again, according to the New York Times, if you win out, you have a 16% chance of making the playoffs. So what do we want for the rest of the season? 615-737-1025. And I don't care what the players want. Well, the players want to go out there every game, and they want to, I know that's their business. My business is on the Tennessee Titans being good in the future. Their business is on them doing well now. There is a difference. So what do we want? 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Frustrating is it? I mean, it's like, okay, you plug this hole, that one comes up, and you continue to have to bounce around and put out different fires.
Yeah, truthfully, that's what it is every year, and to some degree. I mean, we just had more of them this year, I think, than we'd like to have. But yeah, it's certainly you feel like you fix something and you're feeling good about a part of it or a phase of it, and then something else you got to try that comes up again, or something else comes up that's new. So those things are frustrating. Yeah, we'd like to find a level of consistency that allows us to play to our capability, which I don't think we've hit yet. So it does get frustrating that we fix one thing, something starts to play better, and then we have to address another issue. But truthfully, that's every season in all three phases. You're always sort of adapting and adjusting based on good, bad, injuries, etc. So that's sort of just how the NFL season goes. Just feels like we've had to do a lot of it.
That was Brian Callahan talking about, that's every year you got to make adjustments, but apparently this year it's just been one thing after another. The difference is that Brian Callahan really hadn't fixed anything. I mean, I'm starting to think, yes, Levis has played a little bit better. So there is that. And they got rid of Traylon Burks, and NWI is actually reliable. So maybe you could argue they fixed a little bit of that. But the biggest problems of this team, special teams, they haven't fixed that. Right tackle, they haven't fixed that. I mean, they just got run on for 8,000 yards on Sunday, the same way they got run on 8,000 yards by the Packers in week 3. So I'd say they're still having some serious problems. So I was talking about what we want out of the rest of this season. Even if the Titans win out, they will have a 26% chance of making the playoffs. So the exact same New York Times model I used. In order for the Titans to get the number 1 pick, if they lose on Sunday to Jacksonville, the Titans' odds of the number 1 pick are 2%. Only 2%. If they lose 3 of 5, including another one to the Jags, so you got to lose 2 to the Jags because the Jags are obviously down at the bottom, it's 8%. If they lose 5 of 5, it's 22%. So this horrendous football season, which has provided us one meaningful, exciting win, and it's still a win in a game that you didn't play very well in. I mean, you did give up a pick 6. You did allow 8 sacks. You did muff a punt. You did fumble in plus territory. But one meaningful, exciting win against the Texans. The Dolphin game, that was not a meaningful and exciting win. You beat their third-string quarterback. The Patriots win at home in overtime against that crap-tabulous Patriots team, and Brian Callahan was boo-hooing in tears about what it meant. Empty calories. There is no positive for having won those 2 games. So even with this horrible season we've had to watch, you only have a 22% chance of getting the number 1 pick. So let's be honest for a second, and I'll get to your phones. What would you rather have? Would you rather have some wins down the stretch and the number 7 pick, just like you had last year, where, again, you got a good player, but you didn't get one of the stars. You didn't get Marvin Harrison. You weren't able to get Jaden Daniels. You weren't able to get, because those guys are all gone. Although you could have got Brock Bowers, you didn't. Or would you rather have all the games be like the unbearable performance Sunday and give yourself a 1-in-4 chance of picking number 1 in the draft? If it was up to me, I say lose all the games. But that's just me. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. One texter says, I am a fan, and I want us to win every game possible, but most of all, I want to see progress. What does that mean? You want to see progress? How? What kind of progress? You want to see Will Levis throw for 350 yards? You want to see Tavondre Sweat sack the quarterback? You want to see the right tackle be able to block? Like, what are we talking about when it comes to progress? I don't know exactly what that means. See, the thing about progress in the NFL is that it really is only determined by if you win or lose. That's all that matters. Because everybody will talk about, oh, look at this team. They turned it around because they won. That's all that matters. I mean, I remember the Giants opener in 2022. If you remember, the Titans were heavily favored. The Giants were awful. They had a 13-0 lead at halftime. The Titans went and took a smoke break, didn't return for the second half. Saquon Barkley had a big run for a touchdown. Daniel Jones hit, I believe it was Sterling Shepard, for a big, huge gain. Tannehill leads him down with a big throw to Kyle Phillips, and then Randy Bullock is kicking for 47 to win the game, and he missed it, and you lost. And I remember the amount of discussion that week. Derrick Henry didn't run the ball effectively well in that game. And it was like, oh, Derrick's lost it. He's not the king anymore. And people were just going after Todd Downing, and people couldn't believe it. And it was all because the little pudgy guy missed a 47-yard kick in a league where they make the kicks pretty much all the time. The Titans got way too hungover, according to Jeffrey Simmons, after they beat the Texans. Again, a game they didn't play very well in, and they survived because the Texans' reliable kicker missed a 28-yard kick. So when you say progress, I mean, I hate to say it, but the progress is really just about winning and losing. That's the NFL. I mean, I'm sorry. So when you're like, I want to see progress, you're talking about what? You talking about the quarterback progress, or you talking about the whole team? Because the only way you're going to feel any progress with the whole team is if they win. And if they win, that pushes you back in the draft. You go 8-9, you're picking 16th. How do you feel about that? One texter says, historically, Tennessee Titans football screams mediocrity at best. What did you expect this year? Well, I mean, I expected them not to lose by 23 points to Washington going into the season. That's what I thought. I mean, again, Ian, we always do that. The will win, the can wins, the should wins, and we were more bearish on the Titans than most, but I'm not sure before the season we thought they were going to lose by 3 touchdowns to the Commanders.
No, I don't think so. I think we probably put the should win in that one, I would think.
I mean, here's the other part too. Think about this. You've lost to 2 teams already this year that fired their coach. You lost to those teams. Dylan says, Jared, what do you think happens if the Titans lose on Sunday to Jacksonville 42-13 or 42-10? First of all, I don't know how you lose to Jacksonville 42-10. I guess anything's possible. Jacksonville is god awful this year. And everybody knows that. And they're going to be playing with a backup quarterback, and they're playing with a coach who's on borrowed time. There is no, you got to give Doug Peterson another chance. He's getting fired. In fact, I actually think that's probably the job that makes the most sense for Vrabel, is the Jacksonville job. But if the Titans get smoked this Sunday at home against Jacksonville, I don't know what Amy will do. And that's kind of how I felt the whole year, which is, I mean, I knew Amy was optimistic going into the season, that she had gotten rid of the problem, Mike Vrabel, and that, hey, it might take a little bit, but they were going to get something established here with Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon and collaboration and all of that. But I don't know if you're Amy on December 5th, if you still feel the same way you felt at the beginning of the year. A lot of you people don't feel the same way that you feel at the beginning of the year. In fact, the YouTube chat used to be kind of the Rand Carthon pushback against Jared. Now there's one guy that pushes back. We used to have a YouTube chatter. Ian, what happened to Chef Ram?
Not sure. He's hit or miss, but not as much lately.
We have not seen Chef Ram lately. And so I do think that, a lot of fans have soured. What was it? The Fox 17 poll said 84% of Titan fans want leadership changes. How does Amy feel? And I don't know the answer. It's like, have they convinced Amy? No, Amy, we're on the right path. Trust us. I mean, I don't think that, you're not convincing me you're on the right path. But again, my opinion doesn't matter. Her opinion is the one that really counts. So I don't know. And I don't know if you lose to Jacksonville. Again, the Washington game is the one where it's hard to put the lipstick on the pig. It was 28-0 before you could blink. Special teams were a disaster again. Your quarterback actually played okay, and you still got creamed against a team that was picking second in April and has missed on as many first-round picks, if not more, than you have over the last 5 years. And yet, they smoked you. They whooped your butt. That's the one that I think is hard to come back from. But yeah, Jacksonville at home, that'd be pretty bad too. 615-737-1025. More your phone, 615-737-1025. Plus, this is going to sound like a hot take. It's going to sound like a hot take. But I promise you it is not when it comes to the Titans. We'll do that next. And your phones, Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. You know I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back, and they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems or a new whole home generator. Or get a $250 Visa gift card when you buy a new tankless water heater. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today by visiting happyhiller.com. Take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning this month as well, and there's no better time to take care of your home before the holiday guests arrive. Make sure your systems are in great shape and take advantage with some free cash, and I will be doing some of the same as well. I love Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
as Gonzalez has to kick it away from his own 20 following the penalty. So Jackson gets a running start. Lost the football! Jackson fumbled a punt last week. Now on the kickoff, he loses another. And this nightmare continues for the Tennessee Titans.
And this nightmare, is it the nightmare on special teams? Is it the nightmare of the season? Is it the nightmare of the game? My favorite was, I forget which screw up it was. It must have been the muff punt against the Texans the week before, where they muffed that punt, and the CBS broadcaster was like, Titans special teams again. My God. By the way, you get Tiki Barber, I believe, and Andrew Catalon and those guys again this week, if I'm not mistaken. So they'll be well acquainted with your problems. This is going to sound like a hot take, but I don't think it is. Remember when the Titans were preaching patience at the beginning of the year, and they were using two specific teams as models for the we're going to get this figured out? The Detroit Lions and the San Francisco 49ers. Remember, the Lions started off 1-6 in year 2 with Dan Campbell as the coach. And they kept saying before they played the Lions, we can be the Lions. Now, what counts as year 1 versus year 2, that's kind of a different discussion. But remember, they were like, that's the model, is what the Lions were. And remember, Dan Campbell was 1-6 in year 2. Well, 1-6 is left because the Lions won 8 of their last 10. They almost made the playoffs. They finished 9-8. You can't finish 9-8, finish 8-9. So you can't do what they did in year 2. Well, what about San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan? Year 1 with Kyle Shanahan, they were awful. But San Francisco won 6 of their last 7. After they had made the trade with New England for Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, he was their guy, and they won 6 of 7. Thank you to Adoree Jackson for dropping an interception in the end zone against the Titans that allowed San Francisco to win one of those games. But they won 6 of their last 7. You can't do those things. There's 5 games left. I guess technically you could win 6 of your last 7. You got the Texan game, and you don't win another game the rest of the year. But here's why you're not going to do that. This is why you're not going to be able to do that. Because the Titans special teams is so bad every week that it is impossible for them to win 5 in a row. If they could win the last 5, and again, Jacksonville again, Indy, Houston, and Cincy, none of those teams are Super Bowl contenders. One of those teams by default, probably Houston, is headed to the playoffs. But even if you did play well enough, like even if Levis played well enough to win those games, your special teams will muff a kick, or they'll allow a return, or they'll get a punt blocked, or something will happen and they will lose. You can win 1 game the rest of the way. You can win 3 games maybe with the special teams being what they are. Again, even in the Houston game, you muffed a punt at the 4th quarter and still won the game. But you can't win all 5 with your special teams the way they are. And your special teams have shown no sign of improving week to week. Here we are today, still bitching about special teams. And then there's the special teams coach, who Brian Callahan won't fire, because Brian Callahan says he played football in the NFL, Colt Anderson, so he must know. Someone might want to brush Brian Callahan up on what Isaiah Thomas's coaching career was like, or Magic Johnson's coaching career was like in the NBA. Probably the 2 greatest point guards ever. Steph's in there with them as well. Probably 2 of the worst coaches ever. But hey, they played a lot of basketball. And also because, he learned under the Bengals special teams coach. Yeah, if I learned under the Bengals special teams coach, would you let me coach him? But that was his excuse and his reasoning. And yet every week, it's the same with Colt Anderson. Apparently today, the coordinators had their press conferences. This was the doozy that Colt Anderson delivered.
Ryan's talked a couple of times this year about examples of things he feels like he's done to adjust and change in his first year on the job. I'm curious, do you have examples of things that you've done to adjust in your first year as a coordinator?
No, just technique, just, working with these guys, just making sure we're all on the same page, communicating on the same level at that point. But, just being confident in what I'm doing and making sure the guys there's clarity in everything that we're doing. Early in the year, you could probably say that I was assuming guys knew what they were doing. So I felt like I, have learned, how guys learn in certain situations, and, we're going to continue to grow and get better.
I mean, I guess you'd say early in the year, I kind of assumed guys were learning what to do. And now I've figured out, I got to tell them what to do. Do you practice? I mean, Ian, correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't that the point of practice? Is that, hey, do you understand, Johnny? I understand, Coach. All right, let's run it. Doesn't look to me like you understand, Johnny.
I think so.
So he assumed that guys knew things, and now he's done assuming that guys know things. And this is your special teams coach who's not getting fired. You ain't winning 5 games in a row. Somebody in the text line's mad about TSU's special teams. Ian, I am unfamiliar with TSU's special teams. Chris Sanders will have to catch me up on this. One texter says the Titans special teams looks as god-awful as the Tennessee State special teams, and that crap Keith Burns is trotting out on the field. Fire everybody. Keith Burns must be the special teams coach at TSU. He continues and says, I mean, seriously, how in the hell are you in the first round of the FCS playoffs and you give up 2 punt returns for touchdowns in one game with 2 different punters kicking? If the Titans could win just one more game for the rest of the year, I would come on the show live and poop my pants. Live on air. I'm pretty sure you would too, Jared. This team sucks. Well, the Titans can win on Sunday against Jacksonville. I don't know if they're going to, and I'm not rooting for them to, but they absolutely could win the game Sunday. What happened with the TSU special teams over the weekend, Ian?
I'm not sure about that.
Aren't you supposed to know about this stuff?
TSU special teams?
Yes.
It's hard for me to keep up with all of them.
You know about all the things nobody cares about.
Maybe not everything.
But
it does appear that Keith Burns is the special teams coordinator / defensive specialist for TSU.
I love how somebody's listening to the show and is like, I'm so mad about TSU that I'm going to tweet this in, text this in there, and Jared's going to understand what I'm talking about.
I mean, Eddie and them had a good year, I thought. Eddie George. So I don't know.
Well, you know what? We assumed it, just like Colt Anderson assumed that Jack Gibbons could block the guy running towards the punter on the punt against the Chicago Bears. And I guess he assumed wrong. So give him that for whatever that's worth. One texter says, if the Titans special teams coach doesn't get fired this year, I'm done as a Titans fan. I have got to say. So let me say this about the Colt Anderson getting fired at the end of the year. Of course he's getting fired at the end of the year. He knows he's getting fired at the end of the year. It's like Todd Downing when he got fired. Todd Downing knew he was getting fired at the end of the year. Like sometimes you see the writing on the wall. He knows he's getting fired. If they don't fire Colt Anderson, I could not imagine what the fan reaction would be in this town. Because at least with the Terry Robisky thing, there was an argument made that fans would have hated. But I think, could be wrong, fans kind of accepted that was probably a reality after they won the Chiefs playoff game. This, they don't even have a punt returner. They're asking Brian Callahan, who can return punts on the team? Well, Tyler Boyd can catch him. I don't know who else can catch him and run with him, but we'll try things out and see. Oh, great. One texter says, if memory serves me, Rand skipped the Senior Bowl to help put the coaching staff together. Does that mean we can attribute Colt Anderson to Rand Carthon? LOL, says Dustin in Nashville. I'll never get over that Senior Bowl thing. What I'll never get over about the Senior Bowl thing with the Rand Carthon going to the Senior Bowl and everything else was like how big of a deal the Titans have made of the Senior Bowl Like last year, he was at the Senior Bowl, and they interviewed him with Mike Keith down in Mobile, and it was like, yeah, it's really important that we're at the Senior Bowl. And then this year, he didn't go to the Senior Bowl, and everybody was like, it's not a big deal, Jared. So much so that they did a podcast about him not being in the Senior Bowl, and they were like, it's a good thing you're not at the Senior Bowl. And I just found it so funny that I was like, man, they are so defensive about this Senior Bowl that they make such a big deal about. It's important enough for Mike Keith to go to the Senior Bowl, but not important enough for the GM to go to the Senior Bowl. And what really matters, is whether or not they win or lose. Like, that's what matters. If they win the games, and it doesn't matter that you went to the Senior Bowl. And if they lose the games, it's like, you didn't go to the Senior Bowl. I told you. It doesn't really matter. But again, I laugh at how like everything was just so, oh no, you'll see. The doctor is up to the experiments right now, and you will see when he's done. And now you suck. And it's like, well, they got to put together this A+ coaching staff. Wasn't it the one Rand said that they got right? He had a 2-deep depth chart on his entire coaching staff, and they got the first pick at every position, and that would include that special teams coach. Matt says, assumed they knew things. Did Colt Anderson not know the prior special team situation? Apparently not. Apparently not. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, the worst part about it with Colt Anderson is it's in every phase except for the kicker kicking. Punting has been bad. Punt coverage has been bad. Punt returning has been bad. Kickoff returning has been bad. And kicking off has been bad this year. And it's not just one game where the other team has some great special teams guru coach. It's every game. It's bad. Steven says, maybe I'm misremembering, but didn't you say the Titans fans need to be patient with the Titans this year? Yeah, as in they needed to be patient that if the team were 5-5 through 10 games, hey, they could figure this out, not if they can't return a punt by December. Being patient does not mean accepting losing every week by Malik Willis's hands by multiple touchdowns to the team that was picking second in the draft. You say one thing and then people are like, but you said, Jared. Yes. And the context of that was, hey, if the Titans are 4-6, it's not the end of the world. I didn't say, hey, if they're 3-9, be patient. It will be okay. One texter says, if the Titans don't win against Jacksonville, I'm going to regret buying my PSL for the new stadium, which is a 10-year season ticket. Well, or I'm thinking like 10 years worth of season tickets. I mean, I don't know exactly how that money all pans out. The season ticket thing, like, dude, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know, like, what the Titans say. Again, it's not like when you bought your season tickets, the Titans were saying, hey, we're going to be good, we promise. And, the PSL, that's kind of like getting married in sickness and in health. It was great buying PSLs when they were going to the Super Bowl and winning the AFC Central and all of that. But there were some lean years in there. But hey, sickness and in health, baby. But at the same time, it's like the same people that are like, I am convinced that we've got the right group in place, are the same people that are gladly taking your money. It's going to be hard for them to say that with a straight face after this abomination of a season is over when the special teams coach is saying, I just assumed guys knew things they didn't. But I've learned better. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game.
It's hockey night in Smashville.
Off over to Yossi. His one-timer, he scores!
Bringing you the keys to victory and the latest storylines surrounding the Nashville Predators. This is Predators Game Day, now on Stillman and Company.
Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ Anderson. That's my realtor, tjandersonhomes.com. Predators tonight, after the very tough and disappointing and what almost seemed very similar loss to Toronto last night, head to Montreal, where they take on Le Canadiens de Montreal. In fact, I'm reading from the game notes themselves. The Canadiens de Montreal are 9-13-3. That's good for 21 points. They stink. And that's still one more point than you, 7-13-6. So this would be a big one for the Predators as they get set to take on the Canadiens. Let me say this for the record. If I still thought, and I heard Andrew Burnett say in the postgame, after the game, I heard him say, hey, like, we need to, get on the plane and regroup and head in tomorrow and whatever. If there
just
is
trying to
still
win the
hope
week, still a chance to win the week.
I did hear that on the postgame show with Robbie last night. If there is hope, if you have hope of them staying alive this season, they absolutely positively have to win today. There is absolutely no, like, if they lose today to Montreal, like, there is no, I mean, it's over. Like, it's as simple as that. Montreal's that bad. And you've lost so many games 3-2, which I would bet you're probably going to lose this one 3-2 as well. And again, that's my final thought on the Predators game today, presented by TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. Again, get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ. We decided to go ahead and knock Predators game day out of the way because TD is in the house. So the TD Power Hour is next, and that'll take you right into Robbie and Pred's pregame ahead of tonight's game. And I'm going to say it one more time, at Montreal today against Le Canadiens de Montreal. TD Power Hours next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It is a Thursday. It is 4 o'clock. It is not Thanksgiving, which means TD is with us. TD, it is good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. It's good to be seen. And it is another week, another opportunity to talk shop. So I'm excited about it.
So I want to start on the Abomination Sunday at Washington. What was worse, the Titans' performance or the stadium itself in Washington?
That is you're asking me to tell you the prettiest pig, man. That stadium is literally the worst in the league. And yeah, I'm going to go with the stadium. But that was because, either way, whatever happens, win, lose, or draw, I still get paid based off, regardless of what the Titans' performance is. But yeah, I'm going to go with the stadium.
Let's get to the Abomination from the Titans on Sunday. How surprised were you after the way they played against the Texans that the Titans came out as flat as they did against Washington? What do you chalk that up to?
Yeah, I was very surprised that they came out flat like that. I was surprised that the Commanders were able to run the football the way that they did. And it's just interesting how things could go wrong from the start. You have those 2 false starts in the first 3 plays, and it was just like this team saw that, and it was just like, ugh. And that was the big problem. Then you have the bad angle, on the back end from Darryl Worley on Brian Robinson's run. And then also up front, it was blocked up perfectly. 74, I forget who, I think it was Sam Cosmi. He pulled and he blocked out Amani Hooker, and the lane was open. It was a perfect gap scheme. And those are the types of things that you can't have, right? And then also you have the turnover, which gave the Commanders the ball at the Titans' 30-yard line. And soon after that, they scored. So those are things that are going to lead to a bad start. I was surprised. I thought that they would be able to, and especially considering how guys said the week had been. Guys were saying in the locker room that it was a good week of practice. It was lively. They said that it was energized. I thought the special teams would be better too because, talking to some of those guys, they had some meetings that really, how can I put it? It shifted the mindset. But yeah, everything, it was not good enough.
What's crazy too is I actually felt like, okay, you're going to get Washington's best shot because they lost 3 in a row and they got embarrassed against Dallas, and TD, that division as well as anybody. When a team like Washington gets embarrassed by Dallas, they're going to give you their best shot the next week. And I was disappointed when I heard Jeffrey Simmons' comments after the game about the hangover from the Houston win, that it's like the Titans didn't see that coming from Washington, who was kind of at a teetering point in their season.
Yeah, and I don't think they didn't see that. I think it just was a matter of everything snowballing, and they allowed it to snowball. But let's not forget that the Commanders did play well, and they did some big-time things. Jaden Daniels is a really good quarterback. So all those being put together, you find yourself down 28-0, and it's like, okay, you got to call the game completely different. Oh, by the way, one of your most faithful, reliable players, Tony Pollard, had the ball raked out. It was a good play. Like, I don't think it was bad on Pollard as much as it was just a good play by Mike Sanistril. And so you have that turnover. You have all those things happening. That's why. It wasn't a matter of just saying, hey, they didn't know that they were going to get their best shot. I don't believe in that at all.
What did you make of Simmons talking about the hangover from the Houston win and then Brian Callahan coming out and saying he didn't believe that?
Yeah, I mean, look, a player and a coach, they're going to have different perspectives. I think Jeffrey Simmons, he was right in saying what he felt and what he believed was the case. And Brian Callahan, I mean, just because they're in the same building and wearing the same colors, it doesn't mean they're going to see eye to eye on every issue. And I think that was just a matter of 2 different perspectives, and that's pretty much what it was.
Did you feel like being in there during the week that they were too caught up in the Houston win?
See the guys, happy about a win. Their main thing was to build upon that. So I think it was good from that perspective, but also at the same time, this is a team that hadn't won 2 games in a row in literally 24 months. So there's no opportunity for looking down the line. And I thought they did a good job of trying to keep the main thing, which was the week in front of them, the game in front of them. But again, like I said, it just got out of hand quickly. And this team, they're just not built to come. They go down 14-0, 17-0. It's like, yeah, probably time to start typing up this story about the loss because they're just not built to withstand like that type of deficit.
TD, I think what I look at with this football team is, they're kind of some of the same mistakes in certain places, but then they are kind of shoring up mistakes in other places. Like they only gave up 2 sacks against Washington. And I thought that PT probably had his best game at right tackle because we've noticed him the least outside of that false start at the beginning of the game. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, but now special teams makes a huge mistake and ball security for 2 weeks in a row. And I do wonder how much of that is this team's just not going to learn some of those repetitive mistakes, but maybe there are some other things that we can see positives from.
Yeah, I think it's a collection of all that. And that's the thing, because I heard you saying like, well, if they win and they end up whatever, it's so what? You don't care about the players. You should care about the players because the players are the ones out there that are winning the games. You know what I mean? Along with the coaches coaching. And my thing is this. You do want to look for positives if you're a player, if you're a coach, because you want this team you want to win games because you want all that to develop. And I think the Lions are a good example. Now, I will say every situation is different, but if you look at the Lions, they won some games down the stretch a couple of years ago, and it culminated with a big win, finally breaking through the ice and beating the Packers. And then the following year, they were a competitive football team. It's not a coincidence. You build culture. You build a winning culture through winning. You don't build it through losing. And to say, hey, you want them to lose games, I don't agree with that. If I was a fan, I wouldn't agree with that. So I think you do want to continue to look for the positive things. You do want to continue to find areas for growth, but don't forget about the areas where there's huge need for improvement.
Yeah, but if they do win games and I can't get Shedeur Sanders.
Well, sometimes that's an opportunity cost. And frankly, I don't think Shedeur Sanders alone is the answer to this, to everything. There's much more that you need on this team than just Shedeur Sanders. Now, would it help? I think it would help a lot, but there's bigger needs. There are bigger needs.
So I said this too about the idea of Washington or San Francisco. San Francisco made the trade for Garoppolo, and they got hot at the end of that first year, and then Detroit got hot, as you talked about, in 2022. TD, I think the special teams of this team are so bad that there's no way that they could win enough games down the stretch. And I don't see any signs of the special teams improving.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, Jared, how important, how big of an issue special teams are. Yesterday when everybody was posting videos of Calvin Ridley saying, going against Jacksonville is not a big thing to him, I wasn't even in on that. You know where I was? 5 lockers down talking to Justin Hardy. When everybody was talking to Jeffrey Simmons, I wasn't in on that. You know where I was?
Otis Reese.
At the other, I had already talked to him. I was at the other side, all the way up near the punter, Ryan Stonehouse, talking to Luke Gifford. That's how big of an issue special teams are. I've talked to Otis Reese, Justin Hardy, Luke Gifford, Cedric Gray, like all of these special teamers, Nick NWI. Talk to all of these guys for a story that I'm doing on special teams. That's my story this week. Special teams.
What's tough is we all remember the press conference a couple years ago where Vrabel and I got into it about Craig Ackerman, and he had the line about, hey, Rand, find us a returner that doesn't drop the ball. Well, when they drafted Jaquan Jackson and I saw him at training camp, I'm like, hey, this looks like a punt returner who doesn't drop the ball. And yet, it's like a curse, TD. It's like I didn't think that Jaquan Jackson was going to have these kind of problems in training camp and in the preseason and things like that. I didn't think it at all. And yet it doesn't matter if it's him or Kyle Phillips or Eric Garrer or Jared Stillman, or it doesn't matter who it is that's back there. They cannot return punts. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, that has been a big issue. And I'll say this, Jaquan Jackson had his explosive elements at Tulane, but he did have issues handling the football. Just calling a spade. And I like Jaquan an awful lot, but he's had these issues. So, it's one of those things where, okay, I get you feel like you could correct some things, but it was only a matter of time till they started to surface. Now, how often they've surfaced is a different conversation, but yeah, it's this doesn't surprise me, right? And I think they went in believing that they could change it, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, you look, the last time a punt was returned for a touchdown
By the Titans?
Yes,
Darius Jennings.
that was a kickoff return in 2018. Since then, they've had another return. AJ Brown, remember him? He had an onside kick return, but we're talking punt. December 20th, 2012. Darius Renaud. You remember that name?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Darius Renaud in the opening game of 2013 against the Steelers got a safety on the opening kickoff.
Well, I'm talking about a punt return.
Sure.
He had a 69-yarder and an 81-yarder in 2012, December 20th, 2012, against the Jaguars. This is the last time.
Too bad he's not remembered for those anymore.
Yeah.
No,
so
he's remembered for the safety.
We're talking almost 15 days short of 12 years.
You know, it reminds me, because special teams has been such an issue for so many years. I just remember Floyd saying all the time, like, when are we going to block a kick? When are we going to get a return? When are we going to?
Well,
and
the last person
later.
to block a kick, right?
Tim Shaw.
Bingo.
And then they had the 2-game stretch in 2019 where they blocked Vinatieri and ran it back for a touchdown, and then they blocked the Chiefs. And other than that, it is what it is, but special teams around here is a disaster. All right, more with TD next. Maybe some good stuff. Has Will Levis, in TD's opinion, earned the job in 2025? We'll get TD's thoughts. We'll do it next. It's the TD Power Hour on Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
What do you think the biggest, maybe one or two differences have been in kind of the 2.0 version for you the last 4 weeks versus early in the season?
Yeah, just not trying to do too much. Just being a little smarter with the football. Yeah, other than that, I don't think much has changed. I just feel like I've been fortunate to show some more consistency on tape.
That was Will Levis saying, hey, not trying to do too much, which is crazy because he's actually pushing the ball down the field more over the last 4 weeks. The completion percentage has gone down, but obviously the big plays have gone up. TD, what do you make of Will Levis's improvement? And are you ready to say Will Levis QB1 2025 just yet?
I'm not ready to say QB1 2025 just yet. I think he's earned strong consideration for it, but there's still improvement that has to be made. And I think it would be a wise decision to have him back. I think that, but let's see. I think there's still 5 games left, so let's see what happens there. However, I will say the improvement is there, and here's the thing. Obviously, that play where he was able to break the pocket, scramble to his left, and throw the ball down the field to Ridley was a really good one. But you know what was one of his best plays? Is when he had the pressure. He got flushed out of the pocket. He was running to his left. Nothing was there, and he just dirted the ball. That's the progress, the ability to decipher, okay, risk versus reward. I think those are where he's getting better. And that's something I talked to Bo Hardigree about today, is being able to understand, hey, live to see second down, and that's an area for improvement. But here's the bigger thing. These are all things that you expected to be in line earlier in the season, right? So just because it's progress doesn't mean it's all good, and there is still a lot more for him to get down and a lot more for him to show. So we'll see how that works. But no, I wouldn't say he's just outright earned the right. I think it will probably be the best thing, but you never know what could open up.
With that being said, TD, what do you make of the one thing that I will give Will Levis no matter what is he gets peeled up off the ground and has gotten right back up lately, where the hits, the sacks, they don't seem to affect him, the way that they probably should. I've seen Brady scared to death to get hit. I've seen Mahomes. You remember the game in 2021 where Mahomes got hit early by Bud Dupree and the offensive line of Kansas City was a work in progress, and Mahomes was staring at the rush and not down the field. Levis just keeps getting peeled off the ground, gets back up for the next play over and over and over again. Is that something that we can view as a tangible and a positive for him going forward?
Yeah, if there's one thing you're not going to call Will Levis, you're not going to call him soft, or you're not going to call him a punk. Like, Will Levis is about that life when it comes to facing the punishment that comes with being a quarterback behind an offensive line that's not that good. I think that's something you can't deny. Now, that's just part of the puzzle. You know what I mean? There's still more that has to be taken into account. But, yeah, you're right. Watching him just continue to get up and not go crazy on the guys. Like, he says stuff, but you don't see him blowing up and going bat, crazy on the offensive lineman or anything like that.
TD, that being said, what other alternatives pop into your head when we start talking about next year? Obviously, we know about Sanders and Ward, but where the Titans are picking at 7th, I don't think Sanders or Ward would be available with the 7th overall pick. So when it comes to whether or not Will Levis should return as a quarterback next year, what are the other options? Mac Jones threw for 220 last week against the Texans. We're going to see him on Sunday. I think Mac Jones probably looks at this not as an audition for the Titans, but an audition for a spot in the league next year. What do we make of the potential? Daniel Jones is out there. Sam Darnold is a free agent. What do we make of the other options if they were to not go in the direction of Levis?
Yeah, Daniel Jones is an option. That's not that's not a business I would get into, to be honest with you. And the Giants, they saw what happens when you get into that business as opposed to the best player on the team at that time, Saquon Barkley. Now, I think you look at Sam Darnold, he's intriguing, but again, these are all guys that you have to have. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, like Aaron Jones in the back. Like, these aren't slouches. These are all really good players. So, yeah, I get it. Sam Darnold is having a year that you could say is a bounce back year, but don't get it twisted. The surrounding cast, and oh, by the way, Kevin O'Connell is a very good play caller. So these are all things that, are really good for him. So long story short, no, I wouldn't get in that business either. Kirk Cousins, I don't know what the Falcons are going to do, right? They used the 8 overall pick on, he slipped my mind, Michael Penix Jr. And it's a matter of time till they get him in there. So, I mean, do you want to get into Kirk Cousins' business? I don't, but I mean, that's an option. So I think really the best option is going to be to keep Levis. But, next year, that leash, it's got to be short. I think you have to have somebody in there that could come in and just kind of stay the course. But, I mean, look, if you have Levis there next year, Rand Carthon and the crew, like, if Levis bombs, they may be out of there. So you really got to make sure you trust this guy to be your quarterback.
If it was your butt on the line and you knew what was out there and you couldn't get a Sanders, you couldn't get a Ward, but and you know how this works. I mean, these guys do not get second chances anymore for whatever reason. Would you say, okay, I can put my career on Will Levis, or would that be tough for you to do?
That'd be really tough. But I mean, what I would do is kind of what Rand and the crew has done, and that's surround him with and make it as conducive to his success as possible. That's really the what you're left to. Because I mean, look, like there aren't really many options, so you got to work with what you got.
With that being said, do you think that the Titans have soured on Levis at all? And do you think the last 4 games have changed their opinion of him for the better?
I think they've all along saw things within him that made them want to believe in him. I think what they've seen in the last 4 games has kind of reinforced and, kind of resurfaced those beliefs. But I think there's still that degree of doubt because, look, jobs are on the line. They're on the line. Now, if he could continue to progress and show the improvement, albeit improvement to where he should have been weeks ago, then bring him back, and have some trust in him. But I don't think that they've soured on him at all.
Would you bring in somebody to compete with him? Justin Fields is a free agent. We've seen this over the years where it's kind of like we saw it with Ryan Tannehill when he came in, albeit that was more, I think at the time, more of an injury thing with Tannehill than it was a, hey, if Marcus stinks, we're going to go to you thing. But would you bring somebody in to compete with Will Levis for the job next year? Let's say if the season ended today.
Yeah, that's a tough thing. I think Levis is strong enough mentally to deal with that. Now, I heard Robbie and Rexroad were on this morning. I forget who was on with them or who they're talking to, but they're like, well, I don't know that I would do that because you can't have his psyche get challenged. I think that he could withstand that. Now, I know people are going to laugh, but I mean, I would look at Jameis Winston. I would look very strongly at Jameis Winston. And I know he has the interceptions and, the turnovers, et cetera, but I would look at him because I think he's someone that will challenge Levis, might be able to beat him out, but he's at the very least going to be a guy, if you got to turn to him, he can make some things happen for you. And I mean, really, I'm not opposed to bringing Mason Rudolph back if I were the Titans, to be honest with you. But, those are just a couple names just off the top.
I actually think Jameis is pretty good, except he just turns the ball over too much.
Yeah. Look, because he has that level of IDGAF in him where he's going to put the ball in harm's way. But along with that, because you look, what do you have, like 500 passing yards and 3 interceptions?
I mean,
Just
he
short
had
of
a
500,
touchdown
yeah.
pass.
Yeah.
He had a touchdown pass. I think it was in Njoku. I could be wrong. I watched him throw it. I'm like, that is an elite NFL throw right there.
Yeah, he could sling it, man. He could sling it without a doubt.
If I'm Cleveland, I'm bringing Jameis back to be the starting quarterback next year.
Frankly, I look at that if I'm Cleveland. I'm not going to lie to you.
Do you think that there could be a third quarterback of this group? I laughed when the Broncos took Bo Nix in the first round. And that's with, my buddy was the offensive coordinator at Oregon. He was like, he is legit. And I was like, okay, whatever. But Bo Nix has worked out pretty well. It looks like for right now with the Broncos, could there be somebody that plays their way either into the first round or, that could be a starting quarterback in college right now that's not one of the big two?
I mean, people are going to say Carson Beck, but I can't get in that business. That's a tough one, man. Ward, Shador. Milroe is interesting because there's so much upside. You know what I mean? But will teams see what has happened with Anthony Richardson and say, hey, do we have the wherewithal to be patient enough? Now, granted, Milroe has played a lot more football than Richardson. I don't really see anybody. I don't see anybody, honestly. Drew, I can never pronounce his name. Aller or Alar, something like that. He's intriguing because he has all the tools, but it's just like, why hasn't it clicked there at
Why
Penn
does he throw
State?
for 72 yards in every big game they play?
Yeah, why hasn't it clicked? But he's very intriguing, but definitely not first round. Now, you're talking first round, I think Carson Beck will end up in the mix. I think Jalen Milroe, those guys, but after that, nah.
It kind of sounds like Levis might be the guy by default.
It is almost by default. Whereas it's like, okay, what else are you going to do? You know what I mean? What else are you going to do?
TD is with us. Coming up next, signs of encouragement from the Titans outside of the quarterback. Where can Titan fans be encouraged by a team that, they're not doing a ton of winning? We'll do that next. TD's with us for the TD Power Hour. It's Stillman and Company on 102.5 The Game.
frustrating is it? I mean, it's like, okay, you plug this hole, that one comes up, and you continue to have to bounce around and put out different fires.
Yeah, truthfully, that's what it is every year, and to some degree. I mean, we just had more of them this year, I think, than we'd like to have. But yeah, it's certainly you feel like you fixed something, and you're feeling good about a part of it or a phase of it, and then something else you got to try that comes up again, or something else comes up that's new. So those things are frustrating. Yeah, we'd like to find a level of consistency that allows us to play to our capability, which I don't think we've hit yet. So it does get frustrating that we fix one thing, something starts to play better, and then we have to address another issue. But truthfully, that's every season in all three phases. You're always sort of adapting and adjusting based on good, bad, injuries, et cetera. So that's sort of just how the NFL season goes. Just feels like we've had to do a lot of it.
There you go, Brian Callahan talking about, you got to adjust every year. But here, there's been a lot of adjusting, TD, for the Titans so far in 2024.
He's right. It's been a lot of adjusting. It reminds me of like the old Tom and Jerry cartoon, man, like where Jerry is sitting there and you got a one leak and he puts a finger in there, and then another leak pops up and he puts a toe in there, and then another one. And then by the time it all starts trying to be plugged up, it can't be. And it's just a flood. And I think that's what's happened. And it is frustrating. It's got to be frustrating. You're like, okay, well, I put resources into this, but then this, and it's just been a mess. And he's right. It's something that you typically have to do every year. But the difference here and with this year is when you fill up this one issue and cover up this one issue, another one is so glaringly, like, if you notice the return group, like the covers, they were pretty solid against the Commanders. But guess what? Yeah, the fumbled punt. You know what I mean? And then that's a whole nother issue. So it's got to be frustrating.
As he would say, he ain't lying. TD, with that, where do you see signs of growth for the football team that if you were a Titan fan and you wanted to be encouraged about this team building something, where would you kind of circle some opportunities?
Ooh, I think that you got to start with the Honda Accord, man. I mean, I talked to Ty Tolbert today, and he was like, man, he's no longer a Honda Accord. He's upgraded to a Mercedes-Benz. And I just kind of – he's third in the league in touchdowns, tied with George Kittle. The last 8 games, nobody – you hear me? Nobody has more receiving touchdowns over the last 8 games than Nick Westbrook and Kenny. He's tied with who? Jamar Chase. That's something to be excited about. And it's not like Will Levis, like he said, it's not like they're trying to force him to football. He's just getting open. And we've seen a little bit of tweaking some plays, over the last couple of weeks to get him to football, and boom, look what's happening. So you have that. I think Calvin Ridley and his play, I know everybody was upset about the miscommunication and not being on the same page, on that one throw. I think they've cleared that up, and we understand that it was QB scramble drill, a matter of not being able to see where the quarterback was, and that's what happened. But I think Ridley is someone to be encouraged about. I tell you, the one area where up until 2 weeks ago was full of encouragement was J.C. Latham, right? And he's had a couple tough games. We know the hamstring was grabbing him, or the quad, whatever. I think it was hamstring, was grabbing him a bit, against the Commanders. But I think there's still reason to be excited for him, is because, he is a player that looks to be able to work into that, long-term solution to a position. So you have that. I would still be encouraged about Brownlee Jr. You know that there's going to be penalties, with him, because he likes to put hands on receivers, but I would be encouraged about him. I think that Sweat and Simmons combination, this isn't the best week to mention it because, right, there were some issues last week overall with the run defense, and we know that kind of starts with those guys. Not saying it was all on them, but, the run defense, that's Sweat and Simmons. But I think that's still a tandem to be excited about as well.
Do you think they should give NWI a contract extension before we get into the offseason?
Yes.
Normally they don't do a lot of that, but I almost feel like get him a deal, get him a signing bonus today so that he'll sign the deal so that you can go into the offseason, because there's going to be the last 2 years they've let him go out there and there probably wasn't any money for him. So he came back for the $1.3 million each year. There's going to be somebody that's going to pay NWI this offseason.
Yeah. Oh, there's going to be takers. There's going to be takers, and he's in a great situation where if he hits the market, he could pick and choose. I think if he's smart, I think he'll stay here. And you got to understand the grass isn't always greener. And he's found a situation and a quarterback that wants to get him the football. That's the biggest thing. Like Levis wants him, like he trusts him a lot, and I think he's on the same page with him. So that's a positive thing. Give him the money.
I will say this about NWI and Levis. NWI, I thought, had a pretty good relationship with Tannehill. And I think that may just be how he is.
Yeah, no, and look, anytime, and that it goes back to the Honda Accord statement. Like, I love being able to know, okay, I don't care what the weather is, what the situation is. I could go outside, start my car, it's going to get up and go. That's a Honda Accord, man. You know what I mean? And it's not always the prettiest, right? But it's going to give you a nice, good ride wherever you got to go. And that's, whatever you ask Nick Westbrook, NWI to do, he's going to get it done. And again, it may not always be the prettiest, but he's going to get it done consistently all the time, whether it's having to be a gunner on punt team, whether it's having him block down the field for Derrick Henry like he has, whether it's having him come in motion and crack on the linebacker, whether it's having to run a go route like he did for the 98-yard touchdown. Whatever you ask him to do, he's going to come through and do it. And guess what? With no lip. No targets in the first 4 games. Okay, no problem. When my opportunity comes, man, listen, I'm going to take advantage of it. And that's what he's done. And I think that's something that the reliability, quarterbacks like that. They like to know, hey, I'm going to throw it to this spot. I know he's going to be there. If he doesn't catch it, probably no one else is. That is something that you want as a quarterback.
If he gets paid this offseason, you can't say Honda Accord anymore.
Hey, listen, I'm with Ty Tolbert, man. Upgrade it right to the Mercedes.
What do you think would be a fair deal?
Put me on the spot. Fair deal, Nick. Well,
9.
I was thinking 8 to 9. So I was thinking 3 years, $24 million. So yeah, let's look at that. I think that's, man. Could you imagine that, man? Could you imagine? Like, I'm smiling thinking about that. Like, going from an undrafted free agent to a 3-year, $24 million contract.
I think it would be nice that Nick Westbrook-Akine has spent all this time, in the NFL. So he's got money. He just has more money than most people, just not as much money as the people that he's around on a daily basis. And then to finally have, to have earned it. And the other reason why I give him money and pay him is because I think it sets a message for like, hey, we want guys to earn it around here.
Yeah.
We don't want to just have to go out and go buy other players. We want guys to earn it here.
Well, listen, Brian Callahan mentioned NWI as a guy that he points to as an example of how you just stay the course and you keep working and you get, good things are going to come to you. Tyke Tolbert said in the receiver room, he's a guy they point to as far as, just like I said, stay in the course. So yeah, absolutely. And I just know that it will be only right for them to sign him to a 3-4 year deal.
If I was NWI, I'd go to Dallas. Opposite CD Lamb. Jerry doesn't want to pay money, so you don't have to pay big money for NWI. And I think that Dak would wear out throwing to NWI. That's just me.
I mean, you got to be careful what you ask for. That grass
that would be a different lifestyle.
A different lifestyle, but there's pluses and minuses that come with that, right? There's pluses and minuses. For sure.
Questions for TD, and we got to be on time with this one because we got Preds pregame up against it. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, TD is with us for the TD Power Hour. To your questions we go, TD, unless you have a thought.
To the phones.
Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Titans in Truth, Chris is going to kick us off here. Chris, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
What's up, gentlemen? Two of my favorite guys in the world. Gonna make this quick. Quick two questions. One, how do we find a way to show up this run defense that used to be a staple, but now it's kind of falling down a bit? Maybe they need to fill the gaps better. Two, if Shador and Cam are presumably out, which route would you take? Would you go offensive line again, maybe fix right tackle, or go edge, or maybe one of the wide receivers? And last, there better not ever be a recall on Honda Accords, because if so, NWI is out of there.
Thank you, Chris.
I hate the what would you do question, because like there's so many different scenarios. Who's available, who's like, and you never approach any round of the draft saying I need this position. So we won't do that. I think there's really good players at all positions. I don't know that I go tackle, where they will projectively pick. I think, there are some, you look at Abdul Carter, you look at James Pierce, you look at, Kyle Kennard a little bit later to South Carolina. I mean, Ted McMillan, if you want to go receiver, Luther Burden, like there's different options, but that is a question like we need to know, okay, what the situation is. As far as, what was that? The run defense. I mean, Denard Wilson said it. Like they got to bow up and occupy their gaps, right? And if they're not in the gaps up front, the guys at the second and third level, like they have to come up and fill in. And I think you look at that example, the Brian Robinson run. That's the perfect example where it was blocked up front, right? But your safety has to come down and make the tackle, and he didn't. And the result was a 40-yard touchdown.
Dwight says, TD, do you think Traylon Burks is done as a Titan, or do you think they'll bring him back for the final year of his contract?
I don't know. I don't know. I think he probably does come back in the final year of the contract, but he's not going to be in the same role as he was to start this year, right? That's NWI's job. Like he's wide receiver too, unless they go with a highly drafted wide receiver, which I don't think they should do. So no, I don't think he's gone. If they do, yeah, his cap hit it's only 4.5. So I think they have him on there.
Somebody says, TD, how much is the value of Levis's rookie contract play into him starting next year?
I think more the availability of what else is out there plays into it the most. I think that has somewhat of a value in that it will allow them to be able to surround him more with talent, right? And you look at the draft picks too. So maybe from that perspective, but it's more about the availability issue.
One texter says, TD, what do you think of McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona?
Yeah, he's someone I want to talk to him and just see him up close more, because I get biased, man. Like sometimes, West Coast guys, I get I want to see how tough they are. You know what I mean? So, but you look like he's had really big time games. He's a big time player. I know people compare him to Mike Evans. Let's stop that, right? That's not accurate. I think if you talk about styles, Drake London, it's similar to that background of basketball, being able to go up and high point the ball, et cetera. But I want to see more from him. I think he probably is the best wide receiver in this draft. My favorite wide receiver is Luther Burden III, though.
Mm-hmm. One text says, TD, for special teams, what blame on the poor performance do you put on Colt Anderson? And what percentage do you put on the players? And what percentage do you put on the front office for not prioritizing special teams players?
Yeah, I go 33 for each of them. And I think, when you hear Colt Anderson say that, he just assumed guys knew, you can't assume. One of the things that my editor always tells me, like in my stories, he said, you have to, when you write your stories, you have to assume the reader doesn't have a clue about football, right? And I think, as a coach, I get it, you're in the NFL, but you have to assume that your player doesn't understand what you want him to do. So that way you find the best way to teach them what you want them to do. I think when you look at the front office, they made some decisions, right? Elijah Molden was traded away. Hassan Haskins was released. You got 3 rookies, playing on special teams, right? So I think those are things that, maybe they could have went different directions to have a better core group. But even furthermore, the depth on the roster, like they're not deep enough to have some of those starters play on special teams also. So that is that. Now, the last one was on the players. Look, man, if your job is to block the man in front of you, you got to block him. Or if your job is to catch the football and run, you got to catch the football, secure it all the way through contact with the ground or through the time where you reach the end zone, which we know hasn't happened, in a very long time as far as a touchdown return is.
TD, great stuff as always. So we will talk to you on the morning show tomorrow, but also we will talk to you Sunday ahead of the Titans and the Jags as we get set on the award-winning pregame show. Of course, talking with TD available as always. TD, great stuff. Appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate it. Yep,
TD joining us for the TD Power Hour. Quick show today. That's it for us because the Predators are in Montreal. And Robbie Stanley is up next with the pregame show. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.